Here comes Tony, walking in the room, mic in hand, something about to boom. Tell me what you gotta say. Tell me, make it count today. Big Tony speaks, and everybody listens. Big Tony speaks, his voice just keeps on lifting. When Tony talks, you know you gotta hear him. Big Tony speaks. Sit right down, let me hear your voice. Share your thoughts, Tony gives you choice. Tell me what you gotta say. Tell me, make it count today. You always speak, Big Tony speaks, and everybody listens. Big Tony speaks, his voice just keeps on lifting. When Tony talks, you know you gotta hear him. Big Tony speaks. Big Tony speaks. He's got something to say every single day. He's got something to say. Come on out and play. Big Tony speaks, and everybody listens. Big Tony speaks, his voice just keeps on lifting. When Tony talks, you know you gotta hear him. Big Tony speaks. Big Tony speaks. Big Tony. Big Tony speaks.
What is going on, everyone? Hope you're doing well on this fine Tuesday. Oh, yeah, I'm coming hot and heavy right off of Empty Pockets podcast with James over there. Got a little heated, got a little loud, but it was all about passion for this country. So, today's going to be kind of a short episode. Not that I don't have a whole lot of news and etc. to talk to you about. And by the way, I will continue the Muslim subject that I was on yesterday before James came on and etc. I will continue that, just not today because of it being a short episode today. The reason it's short is I'm going to be on Killer Carl podcast as soon as I get a link, and hopefully he will send that. If not, it'll be a longer show tonight. I might bring up some of the Muslim stuff, but anyway, today's story, as you might have seen on my thumbnail, is this. Let me share that to YouTube. Okay. Something's not right here. Hang on. Something's not right with my my stream. I'm trying to figure out what is going on. Okay. All right. I think I got it fixed. We'll see. But anyway, what we have right here, anti-ICE agitator picks up a flashbang and instantly regrets it. If there's any of you out there that don't know what a flashbang is, it's a little explosive device that is not intended to harm anyone. It's intended to create a bright flash of light and a loud noise to disorient a suspect or a rioter or whatever, um, to stop them from whatever it is that they are engaged in, and or to distract them so that they can be apprehended. Whatever the case may be. And well, this agitator decided she was going to run and pick up the flashbang. This is an active flashbang that had been activated, and anybody that's ever seen one go off, that there's only seconds before it goes off. And she ran up to it and grabbed it, and it exploded in her hand. An ICE agitator in Minneapolis picked up a flashbang and instantly regretted it. Chaos erupted in Minneapolis this weekend after a Border Patrol agent fatally shot an armed man. 37-year-old Alex Jeffrey Preddy of South Minneapolis appeared to resist arrest and attack federal law enforcement agents before he was fatally shot on Saturday morning. Preddy was armed with a Sig Sauer P320 pistol and had 2 additional full magazines. And we have this from Homeland Security. This post on X at 9:05 a.m. Central Time, as DHS law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted operation in Minneapolis against an illegal alien wanted for violent assault. An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun, seen here in the picture. And then it tells what I literally just read. Alex Preddy reportedly did not notify law enforcers that he was armed. All hell broke loose this weekend after the second fatal DHS-involved shooting in Minneapolis, and the feds were forced to deploy non-lethal munitions as agitators surrounded their vehicles. Agents deployed flashbangs and tear gas to push back on the violent protesters. Video posted on X by Kim Katie USA showed a protester picking up a flashbang and reportedly attempting to throw it back at the agents, but learned an instant lesson. Medic, protesters shouted as the protester fell to their knees. They're being all politically correct in this article. The Department of Homeland Security is investigating whether Alex Preddy's gun accidentally fired. It can be seen in the video that it was accidentally fired, which prompted law enforcement to use deadly force. So here is the video of the flashbang attempted hero for the left.
Watch what happens when a 50-year-old man walks DHT naturally for just 90 days. Day 1.
Why the... Nobody talking about how they just removed this Simpson episode. Watch this clip very...
Medic.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
They're having to pin her down to get her to be still enough to look at it and see how serious the injuries are, because she is in that much pain, and I believe that she is. You know that a firecracker can literally blow your hand off depending on how you're holding it. So I mean, think about the explosive flashbang, which is much more powerful than a firecracker. And it also burns extremely hot. That's the very, very extremely bright white flash that you see when a flashbang goes off. That is what's intended to disorient, along with the loud bang. So I'm sure that she took some severe damage to her hand. It is amazing, in my opinion, that she still has a hand. The DHS agents were reportedly wearing body cams. Footage posted to X appears to show the Sig Sauer P320, known for malfunction issues, going off and possibly spooking federal agents. Okay, realize that when the altercation started, one of the agents, actually a couple of the agents, yelled "gun, gun, gun" because he had a gun. Okay, so now the agents were hyper aware and they were trying to subdue him and disarm him. And one of the agents was, able to disarm him. And he didn't announce, "I have the gun, I have the gun." So at the point when, and this is all happening within split seconds, okay, he got the gun away from him, and within less than a second, the gun went off. So these agents had no idea that the perpetrator did not have his gun, and he was still fighting with the agents and etc. And when that gun went off, they thought that he had fired a shot, and they fired back. If you watch the video, they immediately backed off and fired. You know, they created a clear area with a clear shot and fired. And this all happened within seconds. Those agents did not have the benefit of playback and slow mo and etc. and zoom. They didn't have that kind of time, that kind of benefit. They had mere seconds to react to whatever, because in a split second, any one of them's life could have been taken. This is why you don't bring guns to any kind of protest, rally, whatever, because it can create a very, very dangerous situation. Right there. You see it? And there's the shots that killed him. I'm going to play that back. I'm going to play that again. Right there. Let's see if we can blow it up a little bit. Right there. It was literally split second. The guy had the gun. The guy didn't have the gun. The gun went off, and those guns are known for malfunction issues. They're known for firing when nobody is even depressing the trigger. They're known for having multiple issues where they malfunction. So, what you get for buying a cheap gun? And I don't mean cheap in price, because prices are different for the guns all over the country. It's not necessarily, Sig Sauer is not necessarily a super cheap name. It's not a high point. But having a name on it doesn't ensure quality. So, and I when I talk about a cheap gun, I talk about the quality of the gun. So anyway, let's move on. Get this here on the road here. Up next, we have this right here. There it goes. Okay. Wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page. Former Special Forces officer. What's unfolding in Minneapolis isn't a protest, and that's what I've been saying. It's an insurgency. It's an insurgency. It's an insurrection. It is. You thought J6 was an insurrection. It was not. That was some people a little pissed off at their government. This is an insurrection. What you see here in this picture, what you've been seeing video for days of, well, for way more than days, for months of, has been an insurrection. It has been open rebellion and defiance of the government. A former Special Forces warrant officer witnesses organized resistance firsthand around the globe. What is going on in Minnesota isn't a protest, it's an insurgency. An individual on Twitter reported a couple of days ago that she had obtained access to Signal and had, quote, the sole intention of tracking down federal agents and impeding, assaulting, and obstructing them. In response to this, a former Special Forces officer shared his observations and a warning, emphasis added. As a former Special Forces warrant officer with multiple rotations running counterinsurgency ops, both hunting insurgents and trying to separate them from sympathetic populations, I've seen organized resistance up close. From Anbar to Helmand, the pattern is familiar. Spotters, cutouts, dead drops, or modern equivalents, disciplined comms, role specialization, and a willingness to absorb casualties while bleeding the stronger force slowly. What's unfolding in Minneapolis right now isn't protest, it's a low-level insurgency infrastructure built by people who've clearly studied the playbook. Signal groups at 1,000 member cap per zone, dedicated roles, mobile chasers, plate checkers, logging vehicle data into shared databases, 24/7 dispatch nodes vectoring assets, salute style reporting, size, activity, location, unit, time, and equipment on suspected federal vehicles, daily chat rotations, and timed deletions to frustrate forensic recovery. Vetting processes for new joiners, mutual aid from sympathetic locals, teachers providing cover, possible PD tip offs on license plate lookups, home base coordination points, rapid escalation from observation to physical obstruction or worse. This isn't spontaneous outrage. This is C2, command and control, with redundancy, OPSEC hygiene, and task organization that would make a Special Forces team sergeant nod in recognition. Replace ICE agents with occupying coalition forces, and the structure maps almost one-to-one to early stage urban cells we hunted in the mid-2000s. The most sobering part, it's domestic, funded, trained somewhere, and directed by people who live in the same country they're trying to paralyze law enforcement in. When your own citizens build and operate this level of parallel intelligence and rapid response network against federal officers, complete with doxing, vehicle pursuits, and harassment that's already turned lethal, you're no longer dealing with civil disobedience. You're facing a distributed resistance that's learned the lessons of successful insurgencies, stay below the kinetic threshold most of the time, force overreaction when possible, maintain popular support through narrative, and never present a single center of gravity. What is going on, Patriot? Long time no see, huh? Glad to see you in the chat. I spent years training partner forces to dismantle exactly this kind of apparatus. Now, pieces of it are standing up in American cities, enabled by elements of local government and civil society that should keep every thinking American awake at night. Not because I want escalation, but because history shows these things don't de escalate on their own once the infrastructure exists and the cadre believe they're winning the information war, which is exactly the situation that we have, and that is leaning more and more to their side. We either recognize what we're actually looking at, or we pretend it's still just, quote, activism until the structures harden and spread. But they're about to spread. Mark my words. Your call, America. But from where I sit, this isn't January 2026 politics anymore. It's phase one of something we've spent decades trying to keep off our own soil. And there you see Cam Hibbe's post about the signal that he infiltrated. I have infiltrated organizational signal groups all around Minneapolis with the sole intentions of tracking down federal agents and impeding, assaulting, and obstructing them. Buckle up, all will be revealed. Each area of the city has a signal. They have zones. And here is Eric Schwalm as a former Special Forces warrant officer with multiple rotations running counter-insurgency ops, both hunting insurgents and trying to separate them from sympathetic populations. I've seen organized resistance up close from Anbar to Helmand. The pattern is familiar. The far left, the deep state, and globalists are running an operation in the U.S. similar to what they did in many places before. President Trump destroyed their efforts overseas by claiming we are now focusing on the Western Hemisphere, and the deep state doesn't like it. Oh, what the heck? Oh, somehow it gets switched to another page. Here. Let's get rid of that. Okay, we're back. Fox News reported that the, quote, protesters were very well organized, and they are. They have logistics going on, just as the Special Forces guy mentioned. They have logistics going on using the signal and other means. And they they are very well coordinated. They know when and where to show up. They know when and where to do what. They are being guided and told what to do. So yeah, they are very, very well organized. It appears likely that Minnesota is just the beginning. Deep State is desperate with the players in place to destroy America. What do I keep saying? What do I keep saying? They want to destroy America. They want to destroy these beloved United States. Hold on one moment and let me do this. Okay, let me flip back here for a moment. Ready to level up your game? AIM Controllers is where custom meets unbeatable value, and right now it's the best deal of the year. We start official with official Sony and Xbox controllers, um, fully compatible with console and PC, no functionality lost. Then you go wild with custom features, smart bumpers, paddles, grips, stick height, custom buttons, even design your own PS5 snap panels. And here's the part no one else is doing: lifetime warranty on all modified parts. That's right, lifetime. What other company does that? Exactly. That's my point. Normally, a fully loaded setup could run you $400 or more. But during our one price promo, it's just 209 US dollars or 182 euros, no matter how many features you add. Use code RUMBLE at checkout and lock it in. This is your sign. Go to aimcontrollers.com and build the last controller you will ever need. That's aimcontrollers.com. Use promo code RUMBLE, RUMBLE, at your checkout and lock that price in and make it how you want it. I thank you so much for allowing me to read you this ad, and I'll get back to the show. So let's get back to our article here, and we'll get this thing going. The former USAID worker Rachel Sayre now works in Minneapolis. She was in locations around the world where the U.S. partook in color revolutions. You've heard those words before, color revolutions. Many creators have discussed the color revolution. She appears to be doing the same in Minnesota. Rachel Sayre is the City of Minneapolis Director of Emergency Management. She was previously a senior fraud distributor with USAID. Today, she called the lawful ICE operation in Minnesota an act of terrorism and compared the scene in Minnesota to what she claims she saw in Syria under ISIS. Democrats are not living in reality. Invoke the Insurrection Act now. Laura Loomer posts on X. Rachel Sayre is the City of Minneapolis Director of Emergency Management. She was previously a senior fraud distributor with USAID. Today, she called the lawful ICE operation in Minnesota an act of terrorism and compared the scene in Minnesota to what she claims she saw in Syria under ISIS. And here is the video.
My background is in international humanitarian response in conflict zones in Yemen, Haiti, Syria, Iraq, and Ukraine.
It's in covert ops.
What I've seen here is what I've seen there. A powerful entity violently and intentionally terrorizing people, making them afraid to go outside so they can't earn a living, so that kids are forced out of school. This has a lasting generational impact.
It does. She's right. It does have a lasting generational impact. She was not lying there. The thing she's lying about is how she knows this. She she there's Marilyn. She is at work, by the way, which is why she wasn't immediately in the chat, and she'll be sporadically chatting in as she can when she gets a moment to stop. They keep her busy. In fact, they're apparently going to make her go back to school for a little bit, um, and and that is separate from her actual duties. She doesn't get time off to do it. So yeah, some of it she can do literally at work, though. The time for the Insurrection Act is now. We are under attack. Make no mistake. We're not only under attack, but we are at war. And conservatives need to rise up and act like it. Okay? And when I say that, that means every single one of you. That means all of us as conservatives. And that means that we're going to have to stand side by side with factions of conservatism that we don't agree with. We're going to have to put those petty differences aside, and focus on the fact that we all believe the same core beliefs. Okay? All conservatives have the same core beliefs. We may not, agree on every little specific, but we have the same core beliefs. And we need to focus on that. We need to stand side by side, and we need to act like we are at war, because we are. And what is the spoils? What is the cost of this war if we lose? Our very freedom, our country. You want to own nothing, no personal property, no ownership of your house or the land or anything. Yeah, hope you get feeling better quick, Patriot. Oh, but we have to, and that's what I was trying to tell everybody when I was over on Empty Pockets today, and that's what I try to tell people on this show constantly, is that we are, make no mistake, we are at war on two fronts, and it could end up being more, two fronts, one with the communists and one with the Muslims, and right now it's looking like the communists are winning. So we've got to fight back. We got to fight hard. We've got to get up off our butts and start grassroots movements all over the country, in your area, everywhere, and get out there just like the Democrats, just like the leftists, the globalists are doing. We have got to be the louder voice, and our politicians need to get their heads out their butts and start working for the people, because that is why they hold office, is to work for us, not the other way around. They work for us. Okay. Next up, here's a little update on the whole situation. Walls says Trump has agreed to, quote, look into reducing the number of federal agents in Minnesota. He's backing out. The left is going to see that as a win. This is what I was trying to say over on Empty Pockets. The left is going to see this as a win. This is going to give them more momentum to go further, push further, to fight harder, to accuse, to twist to twist the narrative, to make conservatives look bad, to win this fight. And they are looking at it as taking over a country, because that's exactly what it is. They are using the same tactics, the same operations, same psyops, and other things that the CIA has been using for decades against other countries. I mean, it's we keep telling you. I know I'm not the only one that has been telling you all. We keep telling you, that this is happening. Oh no, it can't happen in the United States. It is happening in the United States. It's currently right in front of your face. If you don't see it, then open your eyes, please. Please. I don't want to lose my freedom. I don't want to lose my country. I don't want to lose my rights. I don't want to live in the pods, eat the bugs, own nothing, and be happy. I will not be happy in that situation. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has said that President Donald Trump told him he will, quote, look into reducing the number of federal agents in his state. Walz called Trump and described the conversation as, quote, productive, and Trump called it, quote, very good. The immigration enforcement operations in the state have sparked massive protests and standoffs between demonstrators and federal authorities, two of which have been fatal for the agitators. Trump, for his part, expressed optimism about the discussion, writing on Truth Social that he and Walz, quote, seem to be on a similar wavelength. And here is what he said on Truth. As you can see, Truth Social, the real Donald Trump. Governor Tim, oh, it won't let me highlight. Oh, well. Governor Tim Walz called me with the request to work together with respect to Minnesota. It was a very good call, and we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. I told Governor Walz that I would have Tom Homan call him, and that what we are looking for are any and all criminals that they have in their possession. The governor very respectfully understood that, and I will be speaking to him in the near future. I'm going to go ahead and click it and take it to Truth Social for y'all so we can get the rest of this. I know it is going to give me a transcript, but I want you all to see it on Truth Social. So, Governor, let me get to where I left off. Where was it? Speaking to him in the near future. He was happy that Tom Homan was going to Minnesota, and so am I, and it's not acting right. It's wanting to scroll while I am highlighting. We have had such tremendous, it's not letting me highlight, screw it, tremendous success in Washington, D.C., Memphis, Tennessee, and New Orleans, Louisiana, and virtually every other place that we have, quote, touched. And even in Minnesota, crime is way down, but both Governor Walz and I want to make it better. President Donald J. Trump. He didn't say thank you for your attention to this matter. Uh, and there is Tom Homan. If you don't like what ICE is doing, then legislate. We enforce the law. And that's a quote from Tom Homan, and he did say that. Okay, so there's transcript right there. In a pair of posts on X, Walls wrote, quote, I had a productive call with President Trump earlier today. I told him we needed impartial investigations of the Minneapolis shootings involving federal agents, and that we need to reduce the number of federal agents in Minnesota. And he said the president agreed to look into reducing the number of federal agents in Minnesota and to talk to DHS about ensuring the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is able to conduct an independent investigation as would ordinarily be the case. Quote, the president agreed. Okay, that's what I just literally read. The call follows the fatal shooting of anti-ICE protester Alex Preddy by federal agents on Saturday, which sparked violent riots. And they were already violently rioting. That's why Preddy was there in the first place. The polite and even optimistic tone is a sharp contrast from the usual jabs traded by both parties. Trump previously called Walls retarded, and he is. Walls has compared ICE and the Trump administration to a Nazi regime, and that would be Walls' side. The White House had not confirmed or denied Walls' claim at the time of publishing. So you see what I'm saying? Trump is backing off and he is agreeing with Walls, etc. And now is not the time to be backing off. Now is the time to get tougher. And that's my opinion. And I'm sticking to it. Yeah, so let's move on here. From the Federalist, Democrats are willing to die to end the deportations. That can't stop law enforcement. It's looking like it's going to, but, you know, it really shouldn't. Law enforcement loses legitimacy the moment officials indicate we're unwilling to engage in it because of political opposition, even when that opposition is fatalistic. And that's a fact. When you start catering to your enemy, you've lost your legitimacy, you've lost the confidence of your people. But we need to have confidence anyway, not confidence in one man, not confidence in an administration, confidence in ourselves as the majority of this country. We are the majority. We have been for ages. The problem is we have been the silent majority, while the left has been as loud as they possibly can be. That is the problem. We've sat silent while they've been as loud as they could possibly be. Some Republican leaders in Congress are finally catching on when it comes to protecting their years-long project to import destitute foreigners for the purpose of beefing up their share of voters. Democrats are playing for keeps fatally. Another person was killed while interfering with immigration law enforcement operations in Minneapolis. Authorities on Saturday shot Alex Preddy, 37, after a struggle in the middle of the street, during which Preddy can be seen confronting and video recording ICE agents. He died on the scene, according to law enforcement, and he was found to have been in possession of a gun. Separate witness recordings of the incident make what exactly unfolded in those few seconds woefully unclear. Other than that, video shows an agent spraying Preddy with an irritant, and Preddy, for some reason, grabs a woman who had been shoved by an agent. There's a pylon with Preddy hunched over on the ground, and an agent can be heard yelling, "Gun!" That's when an agent who had drawn his own firearm apparently discharged multiple shots. Federal investigations are taking place, and until they're concluded, anybody who wasn't there at the moment should have very little opinion about what exactly happened. What is for certain, though, is that a different individual placed herself in a similar scenario not even a month ago when she also showed up in the middle of an immigration law enforcement operation in order to disrupt it, using her SUV to block police vehicles. After agents repeatedly instructed her to exit the car, she apparently attempted to flee, endangering the lives of herself and everyone else on the scene. She was ultimately shot dead as well. I should mention that she actually hit a immigration agent, and he had to go to the hospital for internal injuries. He was bleeding internally and could have died from said bleeding. Democrat voters, particularly white ones, are incensed over deportations more so than any other issue. It strikes at the heart of their power on two fronts: bringing in new voters from other countries and continuing their mass welfare schemes. There is no question that they view the matter as existential. No matter which way you cut it, it's why two people are dead. The First Amendment right to protest does not include breaking other laws, whether it's obstructing traffic with a 2-ton SUV or with your own body. It also doesn't include causing a nuisance with bells and whistles to create mayhem and distraction for the purpose of assisting illegal aliens in continuing to violate immigration law. The agitators who insist all of that is their right are mistaken and are rolling the dice each time they do it, fully aware that they're provoking the use of force from authorities. And it's not guaranteed anywhere that the use of force won't end in death. But even as Republican leaders are grasping the severity of the situation, it's not clear that they are ready to address it the right way. In an interview on Sunday on Fox News, GOP Representative James Comer said the answer to prevent more violence is to abandon immigration law enforcement in Minneapolis. Quote, "If I were President Trump," he said, "I would almost think about it, maybe go another city and let the people of Minneapolis decide, quote, do we want to continue to have all of these illegals? Are we going to allow our governor, attorney general, and mayor to get away with this? In other words, take a pass on a key campaign promise that in no small part got Trump elected to a second term," which by pulling ICE out is exactly what Trump is doing. Oh, and there is Comer's post, or the post highlighting Comer, and there is a video. No, they won't. No, they won't. They won't rebel. They're on the same side. Now it is true that the regular citizens, not these paid actors that are out there LARPing, as revolutionaries, it is true that the actual citizens have been calling the police on these agitators who are out there with whistles blowing and sirens sirening and making all kinds of havoc and running down, following, and attacking people who they just think might be ICE. They attacked one man and he was a supporter of theirs, but they still attacked him first and asked questions later. you know, See, that's the problem. So, you know, this idea, that he has of backing up, backing out, and everything will be good. No, no. Now is the time that you arrest Tim Walz, Mayor Fry, the Attorney General Keith Ellison, and Ilhan Omar, for that matter. Lock them up, take the military in, and clean up the city. Southern Fried, thank you so much for the raid. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Hey, thank you so much for the raid. I thank you. Um, if Trump can win an election but walk away from his policy positions because Democrats are willing to die opposing them, then there was no point in supporting him at all. Law enforcement loses legitimacy the moment officials indicate they're unwilling to engage in it because of political opposition, even when that opposition is fatalistic. It's not like we didn't know this was coming, and we knew it was going to happen. We all called it, myself, James, Carl, a whole host of other conservatives. What is going on with you? A whole host of conservatives have all called this out, that it was going to happen at the beginning. We have called it ahead of time numerous occasions when we felt that someone was going to die, and they did. These people are ready, willing, and able to die for their cause. Are you? Are you ready, willing, and able to die for your freedom? Die for your rights, die for your country, because that's what needs to happen. We need to be that willing to get out there and fight. We need to be that willing to raise our voices louder than theirs. Axios last summer reported the unease Democrats leaders felt when confronted by their kamikaze voters. Quote, some of them have suggested what we really need to do is be willing to get shot, an unnamed Democrat House member reportedly said. I remember that. And that is true. See, they're willing to put their lives on the line, and they expect their leaders to be willing to do the same. An elected Democrat official in Minnesota less than 2 weeks ago implicitly encouraged agitators to carry weapons in their anti ICE protests. Asked on CNN about yet another shooting during a law enforcement operation, Senator Bobby Champion said it wouldn't change his perspective if he knew that the individuals involved were carrying weapons. Quote, actually, no, right? He said, quote, because from our vantage point, we wanted to make sure and always wanted to make sure that Minnesotans are being dealt with properly. Problem is, these aliens are not Minnesotans. No one denies that the environment in Minneapolis is unsightly. So are root canals, but they're often necessary for long term health. You know what else is unsightly? Hundreds of thousands of people who have no right to be in this country and who are committing violent crimes. I don't need to wait for more of that to feel further justified in supporting the removal of every last one of them. Democrats' willingness to die opposing ICE agents can't mean, cannot mean that everyone else must sacrifice law enforcement along with the protection and stability it brings. And that is exactly my sentiment. I've said, and you know, Donald Trump may feel called out by that article, whether he actually sees it or not. He may feel called out. Well, he should, because that's exactly what I do when I disagree. I'm a Trump supporter through and through, but I will call him out when I think he's making a huge, huge mistake. Pulling out of Minneapolis is a huge mistake. Now is not the time to back off. Now is the time, when Tim Walz is calling Donald Trump after, after all the things that he has said about Donald Trump and, et cetera, and conservatives, after all the things that he has said and spurring these agitators and rioters on, and he is desperate enough to actually call Donald Trump. It's time to put the screws tighter. It's time to put more pressure, not less. It's time to send more troops in, not less. It's time to move faster, not slower. And it's also time for the conservative Americans of this nation, who are the majority in this country, we proved it, to rise up and speak with one voice and drown them out. Because the loudest voice gets the attention. All right, in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, they actually started doing something for once. Is that what you're saying, Watchman? The commies are at Wall's office protesting now. I think that's funny. I think that's extremely funny. They're now protesting him. That is hilarious. But I've said many times that they will eat their own, and they've done it over and over and over again. They have the minute one of their own does something or says something that they don't like, they will chew that person up and spit them out in a heartbeat, and then trample over the remainder until it ain't nothing left but a grease spot on the ground with the eyeballs bugging out. Excuse me. So I think it's hilarious if they are protesting Walls, then that is hilarious because he has been pushing them to protest. He's been pushing them to get more and more violent. He has been pushing them hard. Him and Mayor Fry and Attorney General Ellison and Ilhan Omar have all been pushing these people, pushing them ever harder. Yeah, he's in the doghouse for sure. For sure. Simply because, apparently he agreed to work with Trump. Now, do I think it's enough? No, absolutely not. Just giving ICE the ones that they have, is, in my opinion, not enough. Excuse me. I had a mint in my mouth, and well, I'm ready for it to be gone, so I'm chewing it up. But yeah, just giving them the ones that they have is not enough. They they're gonna have to do more. They're gonna have to actually get involved and actively go get the ones that they don't have, because they don't have all of the criminal aliens in Minneapolis. You know, they don't have them all locked up. Yeah, I agreed, Watchman. It is not fast enough. Agreed, 100%. Howdy, stolen catalytic converter. No, yeah, I thoroughly agree, Watchman. It is not enough. It's not fast enough. It's not enough. These people got to go. And when I say they've got to go, I mean all of them. You know, I'm serious. 100% all of them have got to go. And I'm not meaning aliens that came in here the legal way. There are some, not very many, compared to the masses that are here illegally. There are some that came in the legal way and did it right. And I have no problem with people who came in here legally. They come here the right way, as long as they're being productive members of society and not trying to rip us off. More power to you. Great. Welcome to America. Oh, the only ones that I'm actually 100% against are those that follow Islam. And I have been repeatedly presenting the reason why, over and over and over again. No, we need to put asses in a boat. and yeah, I mean, we in some ways we need to go back in time is what we need to do. We need to reach back into history and uh, uh, change some things back to that in a modern way. So yeah, I agree. I agree. Right, right, right. Watchman. I mean, yeah, I thoroughly agree. You know, I mean, they need to learn our government and etc. They need to learn how to handle things quickly and efficiently. I mean, I know our government is not used to that concept. I understand that they're not used to that concept. You know, but you know they really need to learn how to enact that concept. To learn to do things quickly and efficiently. And with as few casualties as possible. I mean, right, right. We most definitely do. You know, that will, that will help out a lot. You know, is to do away with the Federal Reserve System. You know, we were doing just fine without the Federal Reserve as a country as a whole. So I mean, but yeah, I'm saying, right now, um, unless some major opposition is formed against these people, and that opposition is not going to look pretty. That opposition is not going to look pretty. The optics are not going to be the super greatest. You know, but unless some major opposition occurs against these people, you know, we're gonna lose. And I don't want that any more than any of you. You know, that's why I have been screaming and shouting to you guys, and on other podcasts. I've been screaming and shouting to you guys. You know, we have got to stop being low propensity voters. We have got we have got to start being the loudest voice in the room. you know and you know we've got to be just as willing to go just as far as the left. you know right, right. I mean, I don't know, I'm kind of in favor of, because I know that Trump has been talking to the crown prince, and the rightful actual ruler of Iran. And and I'm kind of in favor of helping those people out over there, get rid of their oppressive regime. As long as we're not having a long drawn out like war. I personally say my thoughts on it is the government has old weapons that we haven't used in decades, and they're warehoused. We have crap tons of them, you know, and we could take a few crates of those and some ammo and airdrop them to the rebels, to the people who are trying to take their country back, and then let them fight. I mean, they've taken some cities in Iran, smaller cities, but they've taken some cities, and they've done that as an unarmed populace. Now, I'm not saying they stay unarmed, but they've done that as an unarmed populace. You know, give them a few outdated weapons, and they could probably do it themselves. You know, so I mean that's my opinion on it. You know, so I mean I'm really not 100% for going and dropping bombs, but drop some weapons and let the rebels take it from there. I mean, we really don't like the current regime, because they are a threat to us. They actually are, not in nuclear capabilities or anything like that. They're a threat to us in the fact that Iran has always been a hub for terrorism. Ever since the Muslims took over in Iran, has been a hub for terrorism. You know, before that, they were a lot like, other than the fact that they were ruled by uh, uh, a monarch. You know, other than that, they were a lot like America. You know, this is true. That's why I say I'm not 100% for going in and attacking them ourselves. But ain't nothing gonna hurt dropping some rifles and some ammo. You know what I mean? Some old outdated rifles and some ammo. Let them fight it out for themselves. Winner take all. I mean, they're the so-called protesters there, that are rising up against the regime that is in place. You know, they're wanting to reinstate their monarch, their crown prince. You know, so if that's what they want, let them fight for it. Let them take it. Well, no, no, that's not true. That's not true. They have never lived in peace. And that's a fallacy that has been perpetuated for so long. It is not true. Historically, it is not true. They were constantly fighting. Before 1948. You know, not all Jews were in Germany running from the Holocaust. You know, after they were actually officially recognized as a nation state, they put out a call to Jews to return to the homeland. Not all did, many did. You know, so they were called to return to their homeland. Many had fled because of the fact that they were constantly at each other's throats. The Muslims, the Christians, the Jews were all constantly at each other's throats. They were fighting over that one piece of property. You know, and even back into the Bible, that same land was being fought over constantly in the Bible, in the Old Testament, and even in the New Testament. That same piece of property was under contention back in the Bible. Throughout history, they have been fighting. You know, the opponents, have changed, many of them, but the Muslims have, for a large part of the time been there. The Christians, after Christ, had his time here, they had their presence, and the Jews, you know, you have their history in the Bible, and you know, etc. As well as historical writings and etc. That yeah, I know, I saw that. Um, no, not peacefully. No, the Muslims don't. No, that's not how that works. It wasn't peacefully. You know, they had been in existence there. Oh yeah, they had been existed in existence there, but it wasn't peaceful. No, Uh, they don't. That's not how they work. It wasn't peaceful. They were constantly fighting. You know, and when they weren't shooting each other, it was a war of words. And the words would generally you know, lead to actual fighting. So because they had their periods of peace, very short-lived periods of peace, but they were constantly fighting. They've always been constantly fighting. That's a fact. Yeah, yeah. They didn't do it for no reason. Come on, come on, think about it. They have been at war for half of forever. They didn't do it just for no reason. They didn't just randomly, throw a dart at a map and hit that church. Hit that church. Okay, that's what we're gonna bomb. That's not how that works. It was done for a reason. Okay. And see, here's the thing. You know, I'm personally anti-Islam, anti-Muslim, and you're not ever gonna convince me that the Muslims are the good guys, ever. Pick. There's a bunch of reasons. And let me tell you this. In a Muslim society, real Christians, actual Christians, are not allowed to exist. It's in the Quran. They follow their Quran. Okay. Well, you are making them out to be the good guys. See, you're wanting so hard to demonize the Jews that you're making the Muslims out to be the good guys. You know, oh, they're innocent victims. No, they're not. You know, and and in Muslim controlled areas, Christians are not allowed. Real Christians, actual real Christians, are not allowed to exist. And I mean, how do you know that they were? You don't. Okay, I know how the Muslims work. And I know that they're not allowed to exist. There are some that go to Christian churches, but go inside that church and see if they're actually Christians. We have Christian churches here in America that when you go inside and you listen and you watch, they are not Christians. They claim to be, but they're not. And the Bible says, many will come in my name, and I will say, depart from me, for I never knew you. Okay, what's wrong with being 501c3? So I'm not gonna play the anti-Jew thing here. That's not gonna happen. Okay, I'm not in favor of the Israeli government. I don't like what Netanyahu has been doing. I'm not in favor of that, but I am not going to play the anti-Jew thing. It is absolutely logistically impossible that they are responsible for every bad thing that has ever happened in history and in the future and present. That is actually logistically impossible. It cannot happen. It is not happening, and it will not happen. Okay, that it's impossible. Okay, no, it's not. That just means they get a tax break. They don't have to pay taxes. No, it does not mean government church. Absolutely not. That means they have filed forms with the IRS and they get a tax break because they are a religious organization. They can't use their 501c3 entity in any political means. I'm not saying that churches don't, have after services meetings and stuff like that. Saying, all right, now we're gonna get out and we're gonna, uh, try to gather as many conservative votes as we can, or whatever, you know. Oh yeah, that's the easy way to go about things. Yeah, just blame somebody else, you know. But if what you started is what you're claiming that they are, well, then you were doing it for the wrong purpose. You were not doing it for God. you know. So yeah, it is not. It is not what you claim it is. Only what you created was what you claimed it was. so, yeah, because see, you're using your experience to verify that what you say is true, and well, if that's the case, then you created what you claim it is, and that's not a church. That's something to be used as a tool. you know that is not an actual church. See, is churches file 501c3 so that they can get the tax breaks, and that their parishioners can give donations to the church and get a deduction on their taxes. I'm not gonna ask how a Jew gave you hemorrhoids, because I only know of one way that that's possible. So yeah, I'm not even gonna ask about that. Don't ask, don't tell. so no, they can't. Not legally. They can't tell you who to vote for. Now they can get together after hours, maybe use the gymnasium or whatever, or a side office or something like that. They can have meetings that are political on the premises, but they can't, as a church, tell you who to vote for. The preacher isn't supposed to get up behind the pulpit and tell you who to vote for. That would be in the capacity as a pastor, telling the parishioners um, what who to vote for and etc. That's not allowed. Now, I'm not saying that some churches don't do that. I'm not saying that some of them don't, but they're using their church in a manner that it was never intended for. And a real church won't do that. A real Christian church won't do that. Mm, mm. Yeah, non 501c3s can tell you who to vote for if they want to, you know, but that's the trade-off. Non 501c3s don't get the tax breaks, and their parishioners don't get the tax breaks, the deductions on their taxes at the end of the year. You see what I'm saying? No, no, because if he is preaching the word, he is preaching the Bible. A real pastor will understand that his flock knows how a Christian would vote. And they really, come on, it's common sense. If you're following the scripture, you're only going to vote one way. you know I mean, come on. Your pastor is not there to control your politics. See, that's what the Pharisees and the Sadducees did, and Jesus hated them. The Sanhedrin, he hated all of them because they were political. That's why he told them that they were of their father, the devil. He wasn't talking to the Jewish people. He was talking to their leaders. Yeah, I mean, literally, they were there present. He was actually talking to them. So, you know, yeah, so come on. I mean, use a little common sense. I mean, and then that's all I ask of anybody. Use some actual common sense, you know, and in this whole anti-Jew thing, I only simply have to bring up that Jesus Christ, my Savior, in whom I put my faith, was a Jew. Do what? You're gonna have to give me some citations for that, because I mean I have multiple degrees specifically in religion, theology, and religious mythology, and yeah, no, no, he wasn't. He wasn't. No, he was not Aramean. Jesus was of the house of David. Okay, he was a Jew. I'm, I'm sorry. He was a Jew, and And even the Romans recognized that. They said that he was Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. So I'm sorry, you're wrong. Just that simple. You are wrong. Mm. Uh, the hell? He was from Nazareth. That's where his family was. They traveled to Bethlehem because they had to register for the taxes. That's why they went to Bethlehem. At that time you had to travel back to the head of the household's birthplace and register your family, and your property and etc. for taxes. That's literally, you know. So yeah, he was from Nazareth, which no, no, they wrote that because that's what he claimed to be. They asked him, and he said, "You have said it." So he confirmed what they said, and they claimed he was king of the Jews because that's what he claimed to be. The reason he was crucified was because he claimed to be king of the Jews and that he claimed to be God. So, that was blasphemy in those days. Blasphemy was a capital offense. Remember, Pilate washed his hands of it. He didn't want to kill Jesus. He left it to the crowd, which the crowd meant the Pharisees and Sadducees, and yeah, they chose to kill him. No, you're not going to change history. Jesus was a Jew. He was from Nazareth. He was from Nazareth. I'm sorry. You're not going to change history. You know, I know for a fact you don't have a time machine to be able to go back in history and change things. So, yeah, you can't change history. It's a fact. It has been documented, well documented, that Jesus was from Nazareth. Okay, I'm sorry, you're wrong. I was born and lived for a majority of my life all over this country and not in Georgia, but I've always been from Georgia. No matter where I've been, and I've been in every state in this country. No matter where I've been, I've always been from Georgia. That's where I was born. I can live anywhere I want to. I will always be from Georgia. That's where I'm sitting right now. What do you mean you have to rightly divide the word? No, you don't. In fact, the Bible commands against anyone taking away from or adding to the Bible. So you don't. And with that, I'm going to have to cut this conversation short. It is time for me to go over and be on Killer Carl's podcast. So, with that being said, I thank you, Watchman, for the conversation. I thank everyone who has been in my chat today for the conversation. I thank you all for coming and watching. And I wish God's blessings upon you all, every single one of you, as well as upon America. Believe me, this country needs God's blessings badly. Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up on both platforms. Yeah, Patriot, see you there. Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up on both platforms. It is a thumbs up on both platforms, no matter what you call it. Hit that thumbs up. If you're not already following or subscribing to the channel, do that respectively on your platforms. Follow and subscribe. And on both platforms, it is a bell. So ring that bell so you know when I am on. With that being said, what's that last comment? That's right. That's right. Study to show thyself approved. Yes, absolutely. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. You can twist its words and make it say I'm wrong, but the Bible itself does not say I'm wrong. I'm sorry, it doesn't. But anyway, with that being said, this has been Big Tony Speaks, and I have been Big Tony, and thank you all for coming. Have a great night, and I'll see you next time.